it's Adrienne from 51st Dates, and hopefully you've had a chance to kind of look at the blog and check out some of the videos. And one thing I decided to do along with different articles and posts is to do book reviews. Now, if you haven't already read, I've done a pretty basic review of the Dating Manifesto by Lisa Anderson, and it's on my blog, the51stdates.com. But in addition to that, I wanted to kind of expand on some of the topics that were explained in the book. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to break it down into 3 videos. In the first one, we'll be talking about the first 4 chapters of the book. Now, I definitely recommend that everyone buys this book, and I would read all of it. The prologue, the acknowledgments at the end, all of it has very good information in it. Now, as I mentioned in the book review posted on the blog, this is a Christian-based dating book. So there is conversations of relationship with God and church and things of that nature. But even beyond that, it's still probably one of the best dating books that I've read, and I want to share it with you all. So we're going to dive right in. I got a couple of notes, so don't mind me if I look down. But the first chapter is called Where Did I Go Wrong? And for many people, myself included, during your singleness, especially if it's been as long as it's been for me, this question mentally comes up a lot of where did I go wrong? Is my singleness because of something that I've done or perhaps didn't do? So it was really interesting that she dove into this topic, and one of the things she talked about was a lot of times we end up waiting for this perfect situation or this perfect person, but we have to be realistic and be honest that, we're not perfect. And so therefore we can't expect perfection to come to us if perfection isn't coming outward. And that's also something she also breaks down in the third chapter called Ditch the Hollywood Script, and it's pretty much along the same lines. But something else she brought up was just based on how our society is, especially for single women and for men as well, especially like for our generation. We have kind of transitioned our timeline, so to speak. We are in a place where we can have better opportunities with our career, with our education. So what happens is, which isn't a bad thing, we tend to work towards our career and what we want as far as our goals for our jobs, our careers, our financial situations, our education, and we kind of lose sight of the relationship. We just kind of assume it's just going to fall into our 5-year plan. But one of the things that she brings up a lot is being honest about us wanting marriage and making it a priority in a sense of not necessarily making like a goal, like in 5 years I'm going to be married, because that's a little unrealistic. But, being honest with the fact that that's what you want, and, actively dating and pursuing that, because as the old saying goes, you're never going to meet someone if you're constantly sitting at the house, unless you plan on dating the pizza man, which is fine, but, let's be realistic. Now, the second chapter is titled, What's the Big Deal About Marriage? And it's an interesting title for starters, but what Lisa Anderson is kind of discussing is, some of the benefits for marriage and kind of why we're not talking about it. And one thing she brought up, which is hilarious, but for someone who works in news, I understand the story, because we do a lot of type studies show blah blah blah. And one of the things they were saying, people who are in relationships tend to live longer, which is a little heartbreaking to an extent, but it was just saying, all the benefits around that. But just like the fact of, at the end of the day, very few people want to be single for the rest of their lives. Even if they say it out loud, it's very uncommon that someone just wants to be in the company of themselves all the time. So we kind of dove into being honest with ourselves about what marriage is, and especially coming from the biblical standpoint of like, God wants marriage for his people. And most people are destined to be married. Some are not, but some will have that calling on their life way before, like, they will know if they're not one of those people. So it's a matter of us being prepared for marriage and wanting that, and just having that idea and understanding of what marriage truly is and what it should be about. And this is one of those things that if you're honestly not sure what all entails with being married, it never hurts to talk to a married couple, because I'm sure there's at least one married couple within your circle of friends or family that you can talk to, just be upfront and honest and be, what is this all about? What can I do? And the third chapter, as I kind of talked about a little bit, is called Ditching the Hollywood Script. And it pretty much just kind of talks about TV and movies kind of romanticize how love is supposed to happen, or at least from their standpoint. It's just kind of getting that idea out of our heads. Just kind of, being upfront, like, we're not going to run into, I don't want to say we're not, situations won't happen, but they always have this interesting story where you meet someone that you don't think you're going to mesh well with, and then by some twisted fate, you end up going on a date and you find out that you've loved this person. And it's just this whole little situation. There's one major conflict that they resolve, and they end up living happily ever after. And although some of this may happen, it's all a matter of being upfront. And one thing these TV shows and these movies don't do is show what happens after happily ever after. So we just have to be and get in a place where we're upfront and we realize that this is real life and that we need to address real life as it stands. And that's pretty much it. Just remaining honest with what we're looking for. And it also kind of talked about having realistic expectations, because a lot of times it's either a not so handsome guy and a very attractive woman or whatever, and you think, if that guy can do it, so can I. And it's kind of like talking about taking off all of those levels of superficial, like all the shallow and all that, just taking it off and just getting down to the bare of what a relationship is and what kind of work is involved in it. And then finally, we're going to talk about chapter 4, which I have a lot of notes on. But chapter 4 is the 5 reasons your love life is a disaster or doesn't exist. I can talk about this personally, because for the most part, it doesn't exist. And one of the things she talks about is exactly what I'm doing, and I've recognized that. But the first one is waiting for the one. This one, I won't say I disagreed with, but it was just an interesting conversation. She was saying kind of this idea of a soulmate, whether it truly exists, and the notion that there is just one person out there for you. And I think this happens a lot of times with people who end up in like multiple marriages. And I mean, like I said, I don't personally know because I've never felt that way about someone, nor have I encountered someone who calls their spouse or soulmate or the one. Now, I do agree that God has ordained one man to be, my husband, or one woman to be your wife, or he has that perfect vision of who he wants to be the one you spend the rest of your life with. But circumstances are funny because there's situations where God wants you to be married, or there was a season you were supposed to be with someone for the sake of giving birth to a child, but that person isn't necessarily the one you're supposed to be with. Now, I'm not a pastor or scholar or anything, but I think there are certain situations where they kind of differ, but definitely the idea of someone being the one and the soulmate. And she also kind of talked about waiting for that one person to show up without going out there and finding out who is and who isn't, like being able to determine whether or not this person is not going to work out for me in a relationship, or just kind of going through those stages. And the second one was you're still a kid. And honestly, that's pretty straightforward. I mean, granted, I still more of adult age, but that idea of not being ready to make a commitment, if you don't have your life together, which is an issue, but if you're still living at home with your parents, trying to find a job, not being able to fend for yourself, you're probably not in a place to date someone, which isn't a reflection of you, but you don't want to put someone in that situation with you. Or if it's just a matter of not being mature enough to handle a relationship. Some people go into relationships with bad intentions of, I like you and I want to continue talking to you, but I also like these other people too, so I'm going to mess with them as well. Like that's a mindset of a child. So that was one of the topics she brought up. Also, you're not dating. That's the scalp right here. And it's understandable. You're obviously not going to have a good love life if you're not pursuing people who you could possibly be in love with, which is something a lot of us do, whether it's subconsciously or not. But for me personally, it's just right now I'm just trying to get myself in a state of mind to actually date, because it's a lot. It's a lot to keep up with, and I just don't think that I'm just physically in a place, and you may feel the same way. So it's going to be the same type of situation, but that's definitely something. If you want to be married and be in a relationship, you're gonna have to date. And the fourth reason was your dating is directionless. This is for all the what are we relationships out there, going through all these phases of dating someone and spending an increased amount of time with each other with no goals set in place for the relationship, which happens a lot with our generation in this day and age. Is we go into this like, oh, let's just see where things go, and then 3 years later you're still seeing where things go. So I think one of the things, like within the book and just for myself personally, is when you're in that situation, especially if you want to date to marry, which I assume most of us do, otherwise you wouldn't be watching this. But if that's the case, definitely setting up goals. Like, not saying that because you're taking me on a date, we have to be married, but being honest, like, I do want to be married. That is something I want to be in a relationship. I want a progressive situation, and if the person you're discussing this with isn't willing to do that, they will let you know, even if they don't say it blatantly out, like, I don't want a relationship. They'll make subtle statements that they don't. And if that's the case, honestly, that's a sign that you should leave. And the same thing goes for if you're in a relationship and you talk about marriage and they're like, well, I do. If you want to be married, you'll say you want to be married. And then the final thing was stuck in a friend relationship. This one is interesting as well. But pretty much she was saying, she gave an actual personal story of someone she knew. She was close friends with a young lady who was friends with a young man, and she had feelings for him, but I guess did not want to express them. So they would hang out a lot, go out, have good times as friends, but she was always hoping that it would turn into a relationship, that he would someday realize that he cares for her like she cared for him, and that they would be in a relationship and it would all be gravy. And it didn't turn out that way. It actually ended with he asked her what did she think about another woman, because he wanted to ask her out on a date. And the friend relationship, pretty much, Lisa Anderson was just talking about how we give someone all of our time and all of our energy, assuming that it's going to turn into something when we never made it clear what we wanted, and therefore, they don't know and they move on. And I think that's kind of on the similar lines of what I was discussing earlier about being upfront with your intentions. Now, of course, the issue with this one is when you're in a platonic friendship with someone of the opposite sex, you don't want to ruin the friendship by bringing up the fact of dating and possibly being in a relationship, but you also don't want to end up 2 or 3 years down the road falling in love with a friend, and then they come back and ask you about another woman, or get engaged to another woman, or any situation. So being able to define and say what you want and what you don't want out of this relationship. So those are the first 4 chapters of the book, and once again, if you haven't read it, I highly recommend that you read this book, The Dating Manifesto by Lisa Anderson. And I will post the next 4 chapters next week. So stay tuned, guys. And until then, check out the blog, the51stdates.com, and comment, like, tell me what you think. See you next time.